joining us today for another episode of What's Your Why Wednesday. Today, I am here with the amazing Amanda Morrow. She is the Director of Investor Relations at Atlantic Bay Mortgage Group. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us today. She's actually at the beach, everyone. So that beautiful wind that's happening, just picture her on the beach at the moment. So Amanda, thank you for joining us today. Now, most of us came into the mortgage industry by accident, but we stay in the mortgage industry because it's tied to our personal and professional why. So Amanda, at this time, we would love to hear, what is your why?
My why is hands down my kids. I think anybody who knows me knows I have small children. And I wanted to be in an industry and in a role that allowed me to be a really present parent. And also to work for a company that has the same priorities that I do, like Atlantic Bay. So my family is a top priority. They know first and foremost, I'm a wife and a mom. So I'm sure there's been plenty of other people who stole that answer, that my why is 100% my kids.
Well, everyone says it a little bit different. So thank you for sharing that. And I could tell you, I remember the very first time I met you, I think your second child was pretty young. And I remember that the event that I met you at, they were speaking about, oh, Amanda, how are you doing getting out of the house? And everything was always tied to your children, which I think is so special. And Amanda, I know you made the decision to go to Atlantic Bay because Atlantic Bay is very family centric and all of that. So I'd love to hear from you, right? Because it is one big family. I'd love to hear a little bit of, what is that family feel at Atlantic Bay that makes it so special to you?
I feel like at Atlantic Bay, our core values are everything. And again, it's not this place where you put your core values on a wall and it's just like a slogan. Like these people really, and these people now includes me, like live and die by these core values. And they have a really strong priority on, if you need to do something with your family, do it. If there's a crisis, we're here for you. How can we help? If there's just one of those days where I want to leave early, I've got a kid's soccer game, they're really flexible and understanding about like life, and also a work-life more integration and not a work-life balance. They understand your family is always going to come first. It's not going to be a balance. It's going to be a work-life integration. And I think that that's not as common with most companies. So it really resonated with me when I had interviewed with Chrissy and started to take the job here, that they had the same priorities that I do.
Well, our industry has certainly come a long way with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that certainly makes me very happy, because years and years ago, that certainly wasn't the case. It was one of those things that, you were kind of tied to the desk and
yeah.
don't speak about your kids, don't speak about your family. And it makes me so happy to see that our industry has evolved into the type of thing where you can have that integration, and you can realize that when you have that integration, people will actually work harder for the company and will actually go even more above and beyond when they feel that it is an integration. So thank you for sharing.
A big thing that we stick by is like work where you want, work where you're comfortable. I think something like 80% of our employees are remote. It's not the type of place where it's like you need to be in an office just so you can sit here and I can look at you doing your job. It's, I trust you to work. I trust you to get your job done. Work where you need to. If that's, I live in Philly and our corporate's in Virginia Beach. I think that they've just made that a big part of our culture.
That's awesome. Okay, so next is my favorite question. I love to hear, so many times, we hear those special stories of families that we've impacted or team members. A lot of times it's also our teams, it's not just the families. And I love to hear some of those special moments where we realize the impact that we've had on others that we either work with or we work through. So Amanda, please share with us, give us, what have those moments in time when you feel that impact that you make?
I think for me recently, it's been seeing the letters come through from borrowers thanking mortgage bankers. So thanking them for a good experience, thanking them for getting them in their home, and understanding that what I do has more of an impact maybe than I realized. So maybe it's, I requested a rush on that loan. Well, that rush put that borrower in their home on time. And so it's just understanding and appreciating that you're such a small piece of the puzzle, but what you do matters. So now that I've started to see some of those thank yous come through from borrowers to mortgage bankers and being like, oh, I was involved, like, oh, I helped on that one. So it's extremely rewarding to realize that what you're doing is making a difference.
And it does. And that's the thing about our industry is we know there is never one person more important than the other. It is kind of a chain all linked together, right? For us coming together to make it happen, because we know it's certainly a whole group of people that work to make that happen and make that difference in the family. And I'm happy that now you're in the part of the process where you actually can see those thank yous and get that feeling, because it really is impactful and you are making a difference in many, many lives.
Yeah, and
Okay.
you don't want to lose sight of the fact that your impact on a borrower. You're putting somebody in a home. It's the biggest purchase of their life. Like, we all get lost in the minutia of things. So it's nice and humbling to be reminded of the layers of that, if you know what I mean.
Exactly. Okay. So Amanda, how long have you been in the industry? How many years have you been in?
I have been in for 8 years.
Okay. 8 years. All right. So in 8 years, you've worked in a variety of a couple different roles and you've learned a lot, right? So what I'd love to hear at this point is give some advice to the mortgage industry out there, to maybe someone that's just starting out or have been in less time than you. What are some of the lessons that you've learned that you'd like to share?
I would say my best piece of advice is to prioritize your industry relationships. So, not only are these people going to be instrumental in your career, people who have taught me so much, whether it comes to content, who have introduced me to the right people, to make sure I'm at the right conferences or right educational events. So, prioritizing your industry relationships. But the deeper layer to that is some of these people now are some of my closest personal relationships, people that I've raised my family with that saw when I got engaged or came to my wedding, or that now I vacation with, or have introduced me to their spouse who I'm a close friend with. And, it's not just like, oh, these are my industry peers or my industry relationships. It's so much more than that. It's some of my closest friends are now those industry relationships. So I would just encourage people to put yourself out there when you're at these events, introduce yourself and meet people. You got to start somewhere, because you'll be so grateful you did.
I absolutely second that. And it's interesting because when I started in this industry, it was one of those things that I was like, now I'm going to stay like in my box, right? Of I'm going to stay in my company and I'm going to stay in the people that work with me. And it wasn't until many years later that I got out into conferences and speaking to people. And to your point, all of my friends now are in the industry. They're all now dear friends that, my husband knows them and they know my kids and, like all that interaction. And I think to myself, wow, I really wished somebody would have told me what you just said earlier. So great advice. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, be vulnerable. Open yourself up. Allow your personality to shine through. Allow yourself to share a piece of not just your professional side, but a little bit of your personal side too. Because especially, listen, we know we go through cycles all the time in the industry. There's going to be times when you're going to need some of those people. Sometimes it's celebration, and sometimes it's a hug. It could be either one, but either one that you need at that time, they'll be there for you. So yes, great advice. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for sharing your why with us. And we wish you all the best always.
Thank you for having me.